What's happening, everyone? My name is Alex and welcome back. For this camera comparison we have the brand new Samsung Galaxy S23 and of course the Samsung Galaxy S22. So the S22 is a year old now. We're starting this camera comparison by recording with the front-facing cameras on both devices. The maximum recording resolution with the front-facing cameras on both of them is 4K at 60 frames per second. However, we are currently doing 4K at 30 frames per second. I'm also gonna walk just so you can see how the video stabilization works, and we'll spin around. Now, there is a big difference between these two devices. So on my S22 we have an Exynos CPU, where with the S23 we get a Snapdragon CPU. So I'm expecting to see some big differences for the video quality and photo processing overall. But we'll see how these pictures look on the computer. We have a super sunny day today, but it's also a bit windy, so you may hear some wind aside from my voice. And with that being said, let's switch over to the rear cameras and I'll show you some sample recordings that I've done with the rear cameras. Alright, and we're moving on to a quick recording done with the rear cameras on the back of the S23 and the S22. For this we are using the main camera and recording in 4K at 30 frames per second. Now the S22 didn't have the best video quality, so I'm hoping that with the S23 we do get an improvement for the video quality. But again, we'll have to see how this footage looks on the computer. I'm gonna stop here, we'll pan up slowly, back down and to the left, and we'll walk this way for a bit. I'm also gonna run so you can see how the video stabilization works, and we'll stop somewhere around here and we'll turn around. So main cameras 4K at 30 frames per second on the S23 and the S22. Alright, so I've switched the cameras to the ultra-wide cameras on the back of the two devices, and I'm still recording in 4K at 30 frames per second. I'm also walking fairly fast and it is quite windy right now, so you may hear some wind aside from my voice. We're gonna walk this way and we'll turn around in a second. And we'll go back down. So yeah, this is how recording would look like between the S22 and the S23 if you're using the ultra-wide cameras on their backs and recording in 4K at 30 frames per second. I also want to show you a quick recording done in 8K at 30 frames per second with the S23 and 8K at 24 frames per second with the S22. I'm curious to see how this would look. We'll have to see if my editing software can actually process 8K videos. So yeah, this is how 8K at 24 and 30 frames per second recording from the two devices would look like. Alright, and I might as well show you how 4K at 60 frames per second recording would look like between the S23 and of course the S22. I'm also gonna walk this way so you can see how the video stabilization works. I'm trying to keep the phones as steady as possible. I guess we'll stop somewhere around here and we'll pan left slowly and kind of up and back down. So 4K at 60 frames per second with the main cameras on the S23 and the S22. Alright, and we're moving on to a quick low light recording between the S22 and of course the S23. For this recording we are using the main cameras on the back of the two devices and recording in 4K at 30 frames per second. Of course, as you can see, we do have quite a few lights around here, but it is darker than usual. So 4K at 30 frames per second. Alright, so a couple of quick thoughts regarding the video recordings. The biggest change that I've noticed has to do with the video stabilization. So the S23 does that much better than the S22. I think that was my biggest complaint about the S22. For video sharpness, there is a bit of a difference there as well. Not a crazy difference, but the footage from the S23 also seems a bit sharper, and the overall video smoothness, I would say. So mostly when you're panning left or right, the S23 does seem a bit smoother. And now you can actually use those 8K recordings, because with the S22, those recordings in 8K weren't that usable, I'm gonna say. So what do you guys think about the video recordings on the S23? Definitely leave a comment and let me know your thoughts. Alright, next we are moving on and checking out some pictures that I took with the main cameras on the back of the two devices during the day. Of course, all the pictures are taken on auto mode and maybe about a second apart from each other. So here I've noticed that the color science has changed a bit. Not a lot, but a bit. So now the S23 is using somewhat warmer tones. I'm gonna say not necessarily a bad or a good thing. I guess it really comes down to how you like those pictures. Now I did notice that some of those pictures from the S23 seem to be slightly sharper. Not a crazy difference, but if you do look close enough, you may be able to notice that as well. Even the dynamic range in some of those pictures taken by the S23 is slightly improved, but overall not a big difference. Somehow I was kind of expecting a bigger difference because it's been a year since the S22 has been released. So in a way I was kind of expecting a bigger difference between the two, but as I said, not a big difference between them. I did, however, notice a difference for 5x zoom pictures. So I took a few 5x zoom pictures, and here every single picture that I took, well, every single one, almost all the pictures that I took with the S23 do seem a bit sharper. Maybe they added a bit more contrast, the colors are slightly better. So I do like the zoom pictures that I took with the S23 compared to the S22. So yes, I can see a bit of an improvement there. Next, moving on to some pictures that I took with the ultra-wide cameras. Well, here the biggest difference that I've noticed is the fact that the pictures from the S23 are a bit sharper. Mostly if you look on the edges of the pictures, so the left and the right hand side of the pictures, you will definitely notice there that the pictures are a bit sharper than the ones that I took with the S22. So that's definitely a nice improvement, because the ultra-wide camera on the S22 was not that amazing. So definitely better now in my opinion. But what do you guys think? Do you like those ultra-wide pictures from the S23 or the S22? And we are moving on to some portrait mode pictures, and here I'm not sure what happened to the S23. Now the S23 is back to over smoothing the subject's face. The S22 kind of solved that in a way, not totally, but it was better. But now we're kind of backwards for portrait mode pictures. So as you can see for Laura's face, the pictures taken by the S22, there is literally nothing on her face, no texture, no nothing. So I do prefer the portrait mode pictures that I took with the S22. Alright, and next we are moving on and checking out some nighttime pictures, and all the pictures that I took were taken using the night mode on both devices. And we are starting the pictures that I took with the main cameras. Now, looking at these pictures, I almost have to say that the Samsung Galaxy S22 has the sharper pictures. However, the S22 also has a lot of noise in those pictures, and the S23 kind of seems to have solved that noise in those pictures. So if you look at the sky in those pictures, well, the sky is not as noisy in the pictures taken by the S23. But overall, I still feel that the S22 has the sharper pictures. What do you guys think? Do you prefer the S22 or the S23 for those pictures taken with the main cameras? As for the ultra-wide cameras at night, here I can actually see a difference. I can notice a difference. So pretty much every single picture that I took with the S23 is sharper than the same picture that I took with the S22. I mean, we've seen the exact same thing for the daytime pictures for that ultra-wide camera. So the ultra-wide camera on the S23 is definitely improved, and that shows even whenever you're using the night mode. And lastly, selfies. Well, for selfies, and I'm talking about daytime selfies because I totally forgot to take nighttime selfies, the S23 is definitely an improvement from the S22. And yeah, too bad that I forgot to take nighttime selfies. So what do you guys think about the S23? Is it worth upgrading from the S22? Would you stay with the S22? Do you still prefer the S22 versus the S23? Definitely leave a comment down below and let me know your thoughts. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.